So the argument that I chose to analyze discusses the lack of benefits of standardized testing given to students across the country, and the argument further examines how standardized tests are not beneficial to students or educators. Um, Over the years, an increase in the prevalence of these standardized tests has increased to an all-time high and now plays such a prominent role in the educational system across the United States. These standardized tests are meant to determine a student's growth and learning, but often they lead to more positive results when they're based on superficial thinking or guessing of answers rather than students being using active learning and recalling past information. There's also a large variance among scores throughout not only the country but from state to state as well, due to a variance of communities, parental educational background, and parental presence at home all affect these scores. Standardized tests tend to measure the temporary memorization of skills and facts, including the skill of test taking itself, rather than a more genuine understanding of the information being tested. The more successful students are of scoring in the exams, the better the evaluation of the educators and the school system. So education is now driven by multiple choice testing and not by the passion for educating students as it once was. I feel that this is naive and callous, and like any other example of minimizing the relevance of structural constraints in education today, ultimately serves the interests of those fortunate enough not to face those constraints, leaving the rest to struggle to succeed. So that's a general summary of the argument. I've also kind of generalized 4 of the main premises of the argument. There were quite a few, but I could go on for days about the premises in this argument. The first premise I found is that many school systems have adjusted their school year curriculum to focus on preparing students for the standardized testing rather than focusing on the core curriculum for that grade and what they should be learning that year. Enabling the school to score higher on the standardized test, which benefits school funding and teacher evaluations, but not improving the students' learning experience overall and better preparing them for years to come. The second premise that I found is that elementary school students are found to be classified as actively engaged in learning when they ask questions of themselves while they read and trying to connect what they are doing to past learning, as compared to superficially engaged when they just copy down answers or guess and skip the more difficult parts in an exam. And as it turns out as a finding, the high scores on standardized tests were more likely to be found among students who claim that they exhibit a more superficial approach to the learning. So overall, the standardized testing focuses on a superficial level of memorization and guessing on topics not covered with the students, rather than being actively engaged and allowing them to draw from past experiences and other information that they've learned, which isn't benefiting the students in the long run. The third premise that I found was that virtually all relevant experts and organizations condemn the practice of basing important decisions such as graduation or promotions on the results of a single test. So if major organizations don't support this view of basing growth of any sort, whether it be students or employees, based solely on one test, then why do we endorse this practice to continue across the country? And the fourth and final premise that I'm going to discuss is that school systems with higher funding to focus on preparing the students for the testing are the ones that ultimately succeed with the higher test results, leaving lower income school districts at a disadvantage. These students and teachers alike are put at a disadvantage from the start compared to affluent school districts, and discrediting the test as fair or standardized in any manner is incapable of doing so, because there is no, although the test itself is standard, the other variable factors that go into the students and preparing them for the tests are unregulated. So the conclusion of the argument is that standardized tests are not benefiting students or educators and are threatening the success of our educational system as we know it. I feel that this argument was pretty strong. There was plenty of premises, and the claims in the article weren't controversial. The discrediting of the benefits of standardized testing, it's a fairly common topic of debate, especially in the past 10 to 15 years. And I do feel that the conclusion followed the premises that standardized exams are not in fact so standard, then they're not serving their purpose. And the rewards and punishments distributed based on the outcome of the testing is not benefiting the school systems. And in fact, the school systems that need extra help are the ones that are scoring lower, and in fact, it's hindering them rather than aiding them in their success in the future. The only thing I do have to say that I wish was different about the argument that I analyzed was that I wish the author gave more cited information in the argument. They did provide a bunch of detailed asides about each topic that they were covering, such as when they were discussing how virtually all experts and organizations don't base important decisions on a single test, and mentioned that the National Research Council takes this position, as well as most other professional groups, such as the American Educational Research Association and the American Psychological Association. But no formal references were provided, so it kind of seemed a little bit like hearsay. I feel like it would have made the argument a lot stronger if they provided references to where those organizations say that they feel that way. But aside from the lack of the formal citations and references, I found the argument was pretty sound, and like I said, the conclusion was drawn from the premises presented.